Hello, everyone. I would like to introduce you to Haidar, a 36-year-old father of four and a businessman. Haidar is now a refugee for the third time in his life. In the early 1990s, he and his family first became refugees by the hands of Saddam's regime against Kurds living in Iraqi Kurdistan. He and his family fled and found refuge in Iran. A few years later, they returned to their hometown in Shangal and began to redo their lives. They restarted life. They began rebuilding their home, their business. However, in the early 2000s, during the US invasion of Iraq, they became refugees again for the second time, this time at the hands of Al-Qaeda. A few years later, again, they returned to their hometown. This time, they have become refugees by the hands of ISIS. As we know, ISIS has gone through many cities and brought upon a lot of rain and ruin. Haidar is now an independent, he's now managing an independent camp of 40 families. The camp is located a few miles north of the city of Baghdad, in the outskirts of Chumchumal.
We founded Design for Refugees in October of 2014. For the past few years, we have been working in this camp, and through our local liaisons, Mr. Sheikh Salam and Reji Najmuddin, we have been able to interview the refugees within this camp and in informal settlements. They have provided us a perspective, a human perspective. They have allowed us to connect with them. And our visit in October allowed us to interview each individual refugee within the camp.
Our initial visit allowed us to create a more personal relationship with the refugees. Initially, we brought with us some nutritional items as well as sanitary items to help maintain their day-to-day activities. But the relationships that we created with them has allowed us to further understand their needs and provide them a more long-term solution than aside from the necessities that they need every day.
Our conversations with each refugee has allowed us to understand what their needs are. Rather than providing them with basic necessities, as we like to call it here, not understanding what they are going through, we wanted to build that connection and that relationship with each person and allow them a voice to be heard and to address their specific needs. Our professional approach has been informed by these interviews, but also it has been informed by our personal experiences.
In the late 1980s, our family began the journey similar to a lot of the refugees today. We evaded Saddam's regime and found refuge in Iran. We stayed in Iran for a couple of years until UNHCR provided support, and we were sent to a host country of Pakistan. In Pakistan, our initial stay was 6 months. However, it turned to 8 long years. During these 8 years, we asked for our rights as human beings. We asked that we be given the same civil liberties of having an education, having health care, and being able to live our lives on a day-to-day basis, much like everybody else around us.
It wasn't until August of 1998 that we received that amazing letter that we would be resettled in the United States, in Clarkston, Georgia. All we knew about the United States was California, from watching a little too much Bugs Bunny and listening to the little ditty, California, Here I Come. The two sisters and I formed a train around our courtyard and began singing, California, here we come, California, here we come. Clarkston, here we came. Luckily, our parents did not suffer from physical disabilities, and they also spoke English. The few words that they did speak allowed them to work with our sponsors at the IRC and for them to secure a job. They provided for us every single day, working hard, and allowed all 3 sisters to get a higher education, with our eldest sister being the first to attain a college degree from our entire family. They have also allowed one little man to get his first grade graduation. We see statistics in the news constantly. These statistics are important. 60 million refugees are in the world today, and they're displaced. 1.9 of them live in refugee camps, while the rest are in urban centers and informal settlements. These statistics are important because they allow for a global perspective. This global perspective impacts all of us. We need to remember these numbers because this is our future. And they're our neighbors. As much as they're suffering, we need to relate to each single one of them. Today in the world, we have statistics in the news, but there's a lack of human effort or a human face to these statistics. The UNHCR and other aid organizations are beginning to rethink how to address the refugee crisis, how to address displaced people. We have to continue to look at the long term and not focus on the short term. We have to remember that the Syrian crisis has formed 1.3 million refugee children. The average stay that a refugee is displaced is 17 years. These kids are born in refugee camps. They once used to know a place that was secure and stable where they had an education, and today they have to be in situations where there's no basic sanitation, no education, no health care.
These statistics became a reality when the 2-year-old Alan Kurd's body was washed into shore. Today we see him smiling. However, his tragedy was one that can't be taken back.
This tragedy allowed the seed of compassion to be sown into our hearts, into the hearts of the world, to rethink refugee crisis. And it is this seed that we want to water and flourish within all of your hearts, so that you can remember the humans behind these statistics. Today, we see that organizations like IKEA and World Shelters and Visible Module design basic shelters for refugees to live in. But these basic shelters do not provide the necessities that refugees need to survive in these situations. This is one tent that was supposed to be for 6 months, but it has become a home for 2 years. 7 family members live in less than 100 square feet. If this is basic necessity, then we have met it. But should we stop here, or should we go further? Refugees live within boundaries. They don't have rights in host countries to work. They don't have proper education or health care. They're in limbo. But what we have seen in the camps is that they're constantly building. They're rebuilding their lives, creating spaces for themselves to live as they used to live normally in the past. They activate public spaces and create communities. This is what we have seen in the camps, is unity. And it is this unity that we want to work in and cultivate. We want to be at the service of each individual refugee. The refugee shouldn't have to rely on one tank that services the entire camp of water. Faucets are located outside of the shelters, making it harsh for them to even wash their face in the morning in the bitter cold. We see that tents that are no longer used become playgrounds for children. We see the refugees working within the camp and creating businesses. It's their perseverance that gives us hope to rebuild their lives and their built environment in the long term. We see design not only as a component for them to live their lives, but also for a catalyst for them to begin anew. How are we planning to do this? We're planning to listen to them, sit down with them, and understand their basic needs, and provide that support that our family found in organizations like IRC or even our neighbors in any country we were in. We want to be there with each individual refugee, and we want to cultivate that hope. Like the one in Saad's smiling face here. Saad, on the journey from Kobani to Iraq, lost his 5-month-old son, yet he continues to smile. He lives in an abandoned home with 7 other families and his 11 siblings and parents. We're here to support them and to know what their needs are exactly so that they can rebuild their lives, not just tomorrow, not 6 months from now, not 2 years from now, but for the next 10 years, for the next 15 years, for him to have the ability to have another child who can have a proper education and a proper built environment to live in. We want to end with the smiling faces of each one of these refugees that you see here today. Each one of them has that perseverance and that hard work ethic to move forward and rebuild their lives.
The next time you hear the word refugee, remember what lies behind that word. It is a human. He is a human. He is not a pest. He is not a burden. He is someone with hopes and dreams and aspirations. He is a human being equal to you and me. Thank you.